That Syrian government forces are closing in on ISIL positions near the city of Deir Ez-Zor, one of the group's last strongholds in the country. With the details, here's Ilya Petrenko.
Deir Ez-Zor is a city that has been able to survive a total siege by Islamic State for some 3 years. And that means that the only way to deliver food, medicine there is airdrops. That also means constant fear of either being shelled by Islamic State or being captured by ISIL fighters. And right now it looks like the siege is closer to being broken than ever before, at least according to the news that we're getting from the Syrian government. The army are claiming that they're now approaching the city, and it's clearly visible on the map. It looks like they've only got 10 kilometers to go. Journalists have been able to contact the governor of Deir Ez-Zor, and he claims that within the next 48 hours or so, the Syrian army will be able to enter the city of Deir Ez-Zor. And of course, in this case, the government is really determined. They're confident, and no wonder the locals are celebrating. We've already received the first pictures of that. But here's something for you to understand the suffering that they've been through in these 3 years of siege.
As ISIS terrorists raided our house, my 13-year-old cousin was staying with us. I hid her in a water tank so that the terrorists didn't take her as a slave.
The situation in Deir Ez-Zor is catastrophic. Terrorists from Iraq execute civilians in the streets and leave bodies lying there for up to 5 days. I secretly drove my sons out of the city. Otherwise, ISIS militants would recruit them by force, inject psychotropic substances, and later use them as suicide bombers.
Well, Deir Ez-Zor, or actually the area around it, is not the last Islamic State stronghold in Syria, but you cannot underestimate the strategic importance of this area. If it happens, if Islamic State gets kicked out of the province, that means essentially that's it for their fighters in Raqqa, the de facto capital of Islamic State. They will have nowhere to run. And here's the Russian defense minister with more on that.
Today there are strategic locations such as Deir Ez-Zor, which I would call a priority. Besieged forces have been courageously defending it for years now, while food, medicine and weapons are airdropped to them. The liberation of the city would be a turning point in the defeat of ISIL.
So it is getting more evident that the joint efforts by the Russian military, their air force, and the Syrian government troops have really taken their toll on Islamic State fighters in the area. We've put together a reminder of the latest successful military ops, airstrikes, and advancements in the last few weeks. So let's wait for more news from the Deir Ez-Zor front line. At least, if we are to believe the Syrian army, we are going to get them very, very soon.
Ilya Petrenko there, and we can now talk too with Ali Risk. He's a Middle East expert and joins us this afternoon. Hello to you, Ali. Just from your point of view, how long do you think then it could be before we see the liberation of Deir Ez-Zor, given the gains that the Syrian government have made recently?
I think that what you referred to about in the next 48 hours, I think that would be the maximum period. I think it actually could be shorter, maybe even today we could witness this, but I don't believe it'll exceed 48 hours, especially as the momentum is turning more and more against ISIS. You know, ISIS have suffered a string of defeats. As you know, the morale is very important in warfare and in battles. And right now, the morale of ISIS is in tatters. It's lowest level, maybe ever since it came into existence, due to that string of defeats which I referred to. So as I said, I expect it to happen today, tomorrow at the most. And as mentioned, it will indeed be a very, very significant defeat for ISIS. The area or the province of Deir Ez-Zor is the largest province inside Syria, and I think that just gives you an idea how much of a defeat this really is.
I mean, and given what you said then, in terms of defeating ISIL as a whole, I mean, would you expect to see ISIL unravel completely then in quite a short time period?
Exactly. I do expect that to happen. You know, that's what usually happens when these groups suffer a string of defeats. But I think what's also important to mention is the military strategy which was pursued. And here I'd like to point out to the fact that before we had, you know, this current attempt to retake Deir Ez-Zor, we had the defeat of ISIS in strategic locations in Iraq. For example, in Mosul, now we have it in Tal Afar. And what's important in that regard is that with the defeat of them in neighboring Iraq, those in Deir Ez-Zor were prevented from using that border area, like fleeing towards Iraq, then going back to Deir Ez-Zor. In this particular case, they have been forced to stay in Deir Ez-Zor because of the successes made by the Iraqi army and popular liberation units. So I want to focus on that fact that the offensive, that, you know, it's not just about a battle inside Syria. I think the battle against ISIS in the region as a whole, Iraq and Syria mainly speaking, has enabled them to, you know, isolate these militants or these terrorists inside that area without allowing them to flee, and hence enabling the Syrian army to go ahead with what appears to be now a decisive and a rapid victory.
OK, Ali, look, good to get your thoughts this afternoon. We'll leave it there for now. That was Ali Risk, a Middle East expert. Thank you.